The massive hall on Centauri Prime buzzed with alien voices. Hundreds of different species filled the floating seats, their strange forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others glowed with inner light. A few looked like walking crystals that clinked when they moved. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center podium, her simple human form looking small among the giants and energy beings around her. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but today would be the last time anyone saw it in these halls. She had served here for 15 years. 15 years of watching aliens treat humans like useful pets. 15 years of hearing them call Earth the junior member, while humans did all the hard work. 15 years of being ignored when important decisions were made. The worst part was how they laughed. When humans suggested better ways to solve problems, the aliens would chuckle and pat them on the head like children. When human colonies asked for protection, the council would say they were too young to understand real politics. When human scientists made breakthrough discoveries, the aliens would take credit and say humans were learning well from their teachers. Today, that all ended. Elena cleared her throat. The alien chatter slowly died down. Counselor Thexvar, the tall blue creature who led the Kalari Federation, looked down at her with those huge black eyes. His mouth curled in what passed for a smirk among his people. "Ah, the little human wants to speak," Thexvar said. His voice boomed through the translation devices everyone wore. "What wisdom does Earth offer us today?" Several aliens made sounds that the translators marked as laughter. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face calm. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times. "Honored counselors," she began, "I stand before you today not to ask for anything, but to inform you of a decision that Earth has made." Thexvar waved one of his forearms dismissively. "Let me guess. You want voting rights again? We have explained this many times. Humans are still too young, too emotional. Perhaps in another few centuries—" "No," Elena interrupted. The word cut through the hall like a knife. Aliens rarely interrupted each other in council. It was considered very rude. "We are not asking for anything anymore." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. When she pressed the button, holographic screens appeared all around the hall. Each screen showed the same document, written in the flowing script of formal council language. "This is Earth's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council," Elena announced. "Effective immediately, humanity severs all diplomatic ties with this body and every member species." The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens gasped. Others made angry clicking sounds. The crystal beings chimed in distress, but Elena wasn't finished. "We are also withdrawing from all mutual defense treaties, all trade agreements, and all research partnerships," she continued, her voice rising above the chaos. "Every human soldier, engineer, diplomat, and scientist will return to human space within 30 standard days." Now the aliens were really upset. The Vorthan ambassador, a creature that looked like a walking tree, stood up so fast his branches rustled. "You cannot do this. The galaxy needs human peacekeepers. Who will stop the border wars? Who will maintain the trade routes?" Elena smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "That sounds like a you problem, not a us problem." Thexvar's blue skin was turning purple with anger. "This is madness. Humans are nothing without the council. You will crawl back here begging within a year." "Perhaps," Elena said calmly. "Or perhaps you will discover exactly how much you depended on those primitive humans you love to mock." She gestured to the screens again. The legal document disappeared, replaced by lists of numbers. Very long lists. "These are the human contributions to galactic civilization over the past 300 years, Elena explained. 90% of peacekeeping forces, 60% of engineering expertise, 40% of all scientific research, 80% of diplomatic mediations, and 100% of the patience needed to deal with your condescending attitudes." An alien that looked like a floating jellyfish drifted forward. "But the treaties, the sacred bonds between species. You cannot simply abandon your obligations." Elena laughed, and the sound was sharp and cold. "Obligations? What obligations did you have when the council voted to relocate 12 billion humans to make room for Vorthon expansion? What sacred bonds were you thinking about when you treated our colonies like empty space to be given away?" The hall fell silent. That vote had happened just 6 months ago. It was the final straw that broke 3 centuries of human patience. "You made your choice," Elena continued. "You decided that human lives were less important than Vorthan territory claims. So we made our choice too. We chose ourselves. She pressed another button on her device. This time the screens showed star maps. Red dots marked every human colony, every human space station, every human outpost. There were thousands of them, scattered across hundreds of star systems. See all those red dots? Elena asked. In 30 days, every single one of them will be off limits to non-human ships. We are taking our toys and going home. The Etherian representative, a being of pure light, flickered with distress. But our trade networks, the economic partnerships, billions of beings depend on human-maintained systems. Then you should have thought about that before treating us like children, Elena replied. You wanted to make decisions without us? Congratulations. Now you get to live with those decisions without us too. Thexvar slammed his fist on his desk. This is a tantrum, a childish response to not getting your way. Elena turned to face him directly. Her brown eyes were cold as space. No, counselor. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. For 300 years, humans have been the galaxy's janitors, soldiers, and problem solvers. We fixed your messes, fought your wars, and asked for nothing but basic respect in return. She gestured around the hall. Instead, you gave us condescension, contempt, and constant reminders that we were junior partners in our own achievements. You took credit for our discoveries and treated our sacrifices as expected tribute. The human ambassador's voice grew quieter, but somehow more dangerous. We learned everything we needed to learn from watching you. How you think, how you fight, how you make decisions, how you treat those you consider beneath you. Thank you for the education. She turned back to address the entire council. In your arrogance, you assumed that humans needed you more than you needed us. I suppose we are about to find out if that assumption was correct. Elena began walking toward the exit. As she reached the doorway, she stopped and looked back one last time. Oh, and Counselor Thexvar? You said we would crawl back within a year, begging. I want you to remember those words. Because when your ships start breaking down, when your trade routes collapse, when your wars spiral out of control without human peacekeepers to stop them, I want you to remember who you called primitive. She smiled again, and this time it was genuinely amused. Goodbye, Galactic Council. Try not to destroy yourselves while we are gone. Actually, on second thought, do whatever you want. It is not our problem anymore. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving hundreds of alien representatives staring at empty air. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the arguments began. But Elena Vasquez was already gone, walking toward her ship and toward a future that none of them could imagine. In 30 days, they would understand exactly what they had lost. But by then, it would be far too late to get it back. 3 weeks after Elena Vasquez walked out of the Galactic Council, the first systems began to fail. It started with small things. Trade computers that suddenly could not calculate shipping routes, navigation systems that gave wrong directions, communication arrays that worked perfectly but somehow could not connect to human-maintained relay stations. Admiral Kethmore of the Kalari Federation noticed it first when his flagship's main engines refused to start. The massive dreadnought had been the pride of the Kalari fleet for 50 years. But now it sat dead in space like a floating metal coffin. Engineering report, he barked into his communicator. The response came back filled with panic. Sir, we cannot access the main engine controls. The system says we need authorization from a human technician, but our humans left yesterday. Kethmore felt his blue skin grow cold. What do you mean authorization from a human? The core systems were designed by human engineers 20 years ago, the chief engineer explained. They built in some kind of lock that we never noticed before. Without their codes, we cannot even turn on the engines. Across the fleet, the same story repeated itself. Ship after ship found themselves stranded as human-designed systems simply refused to work. The Kalari had been so proud of their advanced technology, but now they realized that most of it had been improved or completely rebuilt by human engineers over the centuries. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian mining sector, panic was spreading through the asteroid belt operations. The massive mining stations that harvested rare metals from space rocks had gone completely silent. Station Commander Velthak floated in the zero-gravity control room, staring at screens full of red warning lights. Every critical system was failing at once. Life support, artificial gravity, navigation, communications, all of it designed or upgraded by humans over the past century. How did this happen? Velthak asked his chief of operations. The smaller Zephyrian's tentacles writhed with stress. We always knew humans did most of our technical work. But we never realized how much. They built backup systems into our backups. They designed the computers that run our computers. When they left, they took their access codes with them. As if to prove his point, the artificial gravity suddenly cut out. Felthak and his crew found themselves floating helplessly in the middle of the control room. The gravity generators had been a human invention, shared freely with all council species 200 years ago. But apparently, humans had never shared how to fix them when they broke. The same scene played out across thousands of installations. Mining stations, research labs, defense platforms, trading posts. Anywhere that humans had worked, critical systems were shutting down. And humans had worked everywhere. On Nexus Station, the galaxy's largest trading hub, the situation was becoming desperate. The massive space station housed representatives from over 100 species, but it had been designed and built primarily by human engineers. Station Administrator Thysik watched in horror as section after section went dark. The Nexus was supposed to be a symbol of galactic cooperation, but now it was turning into a tomb. Beings from high-gravity worlds were being crushed as the gravity systems failed. Species that needed specific atmospheric mixes were suffocating as life support systems shut down. Send out a distress call to any human ships in the area, Thysek ordered. I tried, sir, his communications officer replied. The human ships are not responding to our emergency frequencies. It is like they cannot hear us at all. What Thysek did not know was that human ships could hear them perfectly well. They simply had orders not to respond. Elena Vasquez had been very clear in her final instructions to all human personnel. Complete withdrawal meant complete withdrawal. No exceptions, no emergency assistance, no looking back. The economic collapse came next, and it came fast. The Vorthan Empire had been so eager to claim human colonies that they had already sent their expansion fleets toward human space. But now those fleets were drifting helplessly between stars, their navigation systems completely useless without access to the quantum positioning networks that humans had built and maintained. Fleet Commander Zorthak stared at the star charts in confusion. His ships had the most advanced sensors in the galaxy, but they could not figure out where they were. The quantum beacons that every ship used for navigation were all controlled by human-built computers, and those computers were no longer accepting Vorthan access codes. Can we navigate by the stars? He asked his navigator. Sir, we have been using quantum positioning for so long that no one remembers how to do stellar navigation. The computers always handled that for us. Zorthak realized with growing horror that his mighty fleet was lost in space. They had enough supplies for months, but without navigation, they might wander forever between the stars. Back on Centauri Prime, emergency meetings of the Galactic Council were happening around the clock. The beautiful chamber that had once been filled with confident alien voices now echoed with arguments and panic. This is impossible, Councillor Thexvar shouted. How could we have become so dependent on one species without realizing it? The Etherian representative, usually calm and logical, flickered with distress. Our analysis shows that humans have been involved in every major technological advancement for the past 3 centuries. We thought they were learning from us, but it appears they were improving everything they touched. A new voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. Dr. Zithrak, one of the few Kalari scientists who had worked closely with humans, had been studying the crisis for weeks. Honored counselors, she said, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood human nature. We saw their willingness to help as a sign of weakness or primitiveness, but I think it was actually a sign of their confidence. Thexvar turned his massive black eyes toward her. What do you mean? Think about it, Dr. Zithrak continued. A species that is truly primitive would hoard their knowledge and technology. They would be afraid of sharing because they would fear being left behind. But humans shared everything freely because they knew they could always invent something better. The implications of her words sank in slowly. The humans had not been learning from the galaxy. They had been teaching it. Every gift of technology had been a lesson that the other species had failed to understand. They were always ahead of us, Dr. Zithrak said quietly. We just never realized it because they let us think we were in charge. But the worst was yet to come. As alien governments struggled with their failing technology, reports began coming in from the edges of human space. Ships that approached the boundary of human territory were encountering something impossible. Captain Meltar of the Andorian Collective had been sent to negotiate with human colonies on the border. His diplomatic ship approached the nearest human system, but suddenly stopped moving forward. The engines were working perfectly, but the ship would not advance another meter. "Engineering, what is happening?" he called out. "Sir, the engines are at full power, but we are not moving. It is like space itself is holding us in place." Meltar looked out the view screen and felt his courage fail. The human colonies were still there, but they looked different. The space around them shimmered with strange energy patterns. Massive structures that had not been there a month ago now surrounded every planet and space station. As he watched, one of the structures moved. It was bigger than a moon, shaped like nothing he had ever seen, and it was clearly artificial. The human colonies were not just defended, they were protected by technology that made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about physics. "Send a message to the humans," Meltar ordered. "Tell them we wish to negotiate." The message was sent, but the response came back immediately in cold, mechanical language. "Unknown vessel, you are not authorized to enter human space. Turn back immediately or remain in your current position indefinitely. This message will not be repeated." Meltar tried to turn his ship around only to discover that he could not move backward either. His ship was trapped in some kind of invisible cage, held perfectly still by forces he could not understand. Similar reports flooded in from every border of human space. The humans had not just withdrawn, they had built a wall around themselves using technology that the galaxy's greatest scientists could not even begin to explain. But the most disturbing reports came from long-range sensors pointed deep into human territory. According to the readings, entire star systems were moving. Planets were being relocated. Stars themselves were being repositioned like chess pieces on a board. The humans were not just hiding behind advanced defenses. They were reshaping space itself according to some plan that no alien mind could comprehend. In the council chambers on Centauri Prime, Counselor Thexavar stared at the reports with growing dread. His people's ships were breaking down. His military was stranded. His economy was collapsing. And the humans he had called primitive were casually rearranging the stars. "What have we done?" he whispered to himself. But it was too late for regrets. The galaxy was learning a lesson that would change everything. Sometimes the student is actually the teacher, and sometimes saying goodbye means never coming back. 18 months had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was burning. The first war started in the Andorian sector, where two ancient enemies had been kept apart by human peacekeepers for over 2 centuries. The Andorian Collective and the Christek hegemony had never forgiven each other for conflicts that happened before humans even reached space. Only the constant presence of human diplomats and peacekeeping forces had prevented them from destroying each other. Now those peacekeepers were gone. War leader Thondar of the Andorian Collective stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching enemy crystal ships advance across his view screen. The Christek vessels looked like flying diamonds, beautiful and deadly in the starlight. "Sir, should we attempt to contact the human peacekeeping base?" his communications officer asked. Thondar's face was grim. "There is no human peacekeeping base anymore. They evacuated 6 months ago." He paused, remembering the human commander who had kept peace in this sector for 20 years. "We are on our own now." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Without human-designed conflict resolution protocols, both sides fought with the kind of desperate fury that comes from generations of suppressed hatred. Entire planets were reduced to glass. Star systems became graveyards. But the Andorian Christek War was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, old conflicts erupted like infected wounds, species that had barely tolerated each other. With human mediation now had no reason to show restraint. The Zephyrian mining consortium declared war on the orbital workers. Union over resource rights that human arbitrators had managed for decades. The Ethereal Federation split into 3 factions that immediately began fighting over territory that human diplomats had carefully divided among them. On Centauri Prime, the Galactic Council meetings had become shouting matches. Half the species were at war with the other half, and the remaining neutral parties were too busy dealing with their own technological failures to help anyone else. Counselor Thexvar looked older than his 800 years. His blue skin had faded to a sickly gray, and his once proud bearing was hunched with stress. The Kalari Federation was falling apart. Their ships were still dead in space. Their colonies were struggling without human-maintained life support systems, and their military was effectively non-existent. "We need to send envoys to human space," announced Counselor Veltar of the ancient Primarch civilization. Her species was one of the oldest in the galaxy, but even their vast knowledge could not replace human engineering expertise. "We have tried," replied the Vorthan representative, his tree-like form rustling with frustration. "Every ship we send stops at the barrier around human territory. We cannot even get close enough to attempt communication." Dr. Zithrak, who had become the Council's expert on human affairs by default, stood up slowly. She had been studying the crisis for months, and her findings were becoming more disturbing every day. "Honored counselors," she began, "I have been analyzing the technology that humans left behind, and I believe our situation is worse than we thought." The chamber fell silent. Given how bad things already were, the idea that they could be worse was terrifying. "The barrier around human space is not a simple force field," Dr. Zithrak continued. "Our sensor readings suggest it is some kind of dimensional manipulation. The humans appear to have isolated their space from normal physics." Counselor Thexvar leaned forward. "What does that mean in simple terms, Doctor?" "It means they are not hiding behind a wall, sir. They have removed themselves from our reality entirely. The space they occupy still exists, but it exists according to different rules." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several alien representatives made sounds of distress. The crystal beings chimed in harmonics that their translators could not interpret. Furthermore, Dr. Zithrak added, "The moving star systems we detected earlier appear to be just the beginning. Our long-range sensors show that human space is changing, expanding, growing into configurations that should be impossible, according to everything we know about stellar mechanics." As if her words had summoned it, an urgent alert echoed through the chamber. The Council's head of intelligence, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Kethril, projected new images into the center of the room. "This was taken 6 hours ago," Kethril announced. The images showed what had once been a simple red dwarf star in human territory. Now it was surrounded by massive geometric structures that dwarfed planets. The entire star has been enclosed in some kind of artificial shell. "We believe the humans are harvesting its entire energy output." More images followed. Stars connected by streams of visible energy. Planets arranged in patterns that formed massive geometric shapes when viewed from space. Moons that moved in perfect synchronization despite being in different star systems. "They are building something," Kethril continued. "Something that spans multiple star systems and operates on principles we cannot understand." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Counselor Veltar spoke in a whisper. "How long have they been planning this?" Dr. Zithrak had been afraid someone would ask that question. Based on the complexity of what we are seeing and the fact that they were able to implement it so quickly after leaving the Council, I estimate they have been preparing for this for at least 500 years. Possibly longer. The number hit the chamber like an explosion. 500 years meant that humans had been planning their departure since before they joined the Council. Every treaty they signed, every technology they shared, every diplomatic solution they provided, all of it had been part of a plan that stretched across centuries. "They played us," Thexvar said, his voice hollow with realization. "For 5 centuries they let us think we were in charge while they prepared for this moment. But even as the Council struggled with their political crisis, individual civilizations were facing complete collapse. The Etherian Federation had been one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Their cities floated in the clouds of gas giants, powered by technology so elegant it seemed like art. But that technology required constant maintenance by beings who understood both science and aesthetics, a combination that only human engineers had mastered. Without human technicians, the floating cities were falling from the sky. Chancellor Morthine watched from her emergency bunker as another city crashed into the gas giant's core. Millions of Etherians died in each impact, their crystalline bodies shattered by forces their ancestors had never had to face. "How many cities do we have left?" she asked her aide. 17, Chancellor, but the stabilizers are failing on all of them. Without human engineers, we estimate complete evacuation will be necessary within 6 months. The Etherian civilization, which had existed for over 10,000 years, was ending. Their people were refugees in their own star system, begging other species for transport to planets they had never needed to live on before. But the Etherians were not alone in their suffering. Across the galaxy, species that had specialized in certain areas while relying on humans for everything else were learning the true cost of their dependence. The Christek hegemony, masters of energy weapons, discovered that their manufacturing systems had been designed by humans and would not function without human oversight. The Vorthon Empire, experts in biological engineering, found that their most advanced facilities were controlled by human-built computers that had locked them out. Even species that had never directly worked with humans were affected. The galactic economy had become so interconnected, so dependent on human-maintained infrastructure, that the collapse was spreading like a plague. Trade routes that had carried goods for centuries suddenly became useless without human-built navigation systems. Communication networks that connected thousands of worlds went silent without human technicians to maintain the quantum relay stations. Financial systems that had managed the wealth of entire civilizations crashed when their human-designed security protocols activated. The galaxy's banking center on Nexus Station had become a ghost town. The massive computers that tracked trillions of transactions across hundreds of species had shut down when their human operators left. Entire civilizations found themselves unable to access their own wealth because the access codes were stored in systems that only humans knew how to restart. In desperation, alien governments began offering anything they could think of to convince humans to help them. The Kalari Federation broadcast messages offering full voting rights in the Council, territory, technology, even formal apologies for centuries of condescending treatment. The responses they received were not encouraging. Every message sent toward human space came back with the same automated reply. Unknown sender. No diplomatic relations exist with your government. Your message has been logged for archival purposes. It was like screaming into an empty room. The humans were not ignoring the alien pleas. They simply no longer recognized the aliens as entities worth communicating with. But the most terrifying reports came from the few alien ships that had managed to get close to the barrier around human space before being stopped. Their sensors detected something that changed everything: temporal distortions. Time itself was moving differently around human territory. Dr. Zithrak had not slept in 3 days. The Kalari scientist sat surrounded by towers of data crystals and holographic displays, her forearms working frantically to piece together the truth that was hiding in plain sight. For months, she had been studying every piece of technology that humans had left behind, every research paper they had published, every casual conversation her colleagues remembered having with human scientists. What she was finding made her question everything she thought she knew about the universe. The breakthrough came when she found a research file buried deep in the archives of the Zentori Science Institute. It was a joint project from 50 years ago between human and Kalari physicists, studying something called dimensional resonance theory. At the time, her colleagues had dismissed it as interesting but impractical. Now she understood why the humans had been so eager to share the research. "Computer, display the dimensional resonance equations," she commanded. The holographic screen filled with mathematical formulas that hurt to look at. But hidden within the complex symbols, Zithrak could see patterns that terrified her. The humans had not been studying dimensional physics. They had been mapping how to break through to other layers of reality. She checked the date on the file again. 50 years ago. The humans had been working on this technology for 50 years, and they had shared their findings with anyone who wanted to see them. The aliens had simply been too arrogant to understand what they were looking at. With shaking hands, she opened another file. This one was from a human engineer who had worked on gravity manipulation systems. What she saw made her drop her data pad. The engineer's notes described gravity not as a force, but as a localized space-time distortion effect. The human had been treating the fundamental laws of physics like suggestions that could be ignored with the right knowledge. File after file revealed the same pattern. Humans had been studying concepts that other species considered purely theoretical: consciousness transfer, quantum probability manipulation, temporal mechanics, reality editing. And they had been sharing their research openly, confident that no one else would understand the true implications. Dr. Zithrak realized she was looking at the greatest deception in galactic history. For centuries, everyone had assumed that humans were learning from the advanced alien civilizations around them. The truth was exactly the opposite. The aliens had been the students, and humans had been conducting the largest educational experiment in the history of the universe. She gathered her findings and requested an emergency session with the Galactic Council. What remained of the Council anyway? 3 more species had withdrawn entirely, unable to maintain their governments without human-supported infrastructure. 2 others were completely focused on civil wars that had erupted when their human peacekeepers left. The council chamber was less than half full when Dr. Zithrak presented her findings. Those who attended listened in growing horror as she explained what she had discovered. Every major technological advancement in the past 5 centuries can be traced back to human research, she announced. Faster-than-light communication, artificial gravity, quantum computing, medical nanotechnology, even the translation devices we are using right now, all of it was developed by humans and then shared with us. Counselor Thexvar interrupted. That is impossible. Humans were barely out of their home system when they joined the council. They were primitive compared to established civilizations like the Kalari Federation. That is what they wanted us to think, Dr. Zithrak replied. But look at the evidence. When humans first made contact with galactic civilization, how long did it take them to understand our technology? A few years, Thexvar admitted. Remarkably fast for a new species. And how long did it take them to improve on that technology? The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the chamber was remembering the same thing. Humans had not just learned to use galactic technology, they had made it better within months of seeing it. They reverse-engineered everything we showed them and then built superior versions. Dr. Zithrak continued. We thought they were learning from us, but they were analyzing our limitations and designing solutions to problems we did not even know we had. She activated a holographic display showing the timeline of human technological contributions. The data was overwhelming. In field after field, humans had taken alien technology and improved it so dramatically that the original versions became obsolete. Look at this pattern. She pointed to the display. Every time we showed humans something new, they would study it for a short time, then return with improvements that solved problems we had been struggling with for centuries. We interpreted this as exceptional learning ability. But what if it was actually condescension? The word hit the chamber like a physical blow. The idea that humans had been condescending to them was almost unthinkable. Think about it from their perspective. Dr. Zithrak pressed on. They encounter a galaxy full of species that have been stuck at the same technological level for thousands of years. Species that have specialized in narrow fields but never learned to think beyond their limitations. What would a truly advanced civilization do in that situation? Counselor Veltar of the Primarch spoke up, her ancient voice trembling. They would study us, learn how we think, understand our limitations. Exactly, Dr. Zithrak confirmed. And they would be patient. They would let us think we were teaching them while they were actually running the largest anthropological study in history. The implications were staggering. Every war that humans had helped to resolve had been a test of their peacekeeping technologies. Every trade dispute they had mediated had been an experiment in economic psychology. Every diplomatic breakthrough they had achieved had been a lesson in how different species could be manipulated into cooperation. The humans were not our partners, Dr. Zithrak said quietly. We were their lab rats. But even as the council members struggled to accept this revelation, worse news was arriving from the borders of human space. Commander Kelthas of the Andorian Deep Survey Fleet had been tasked with monitoring the barrier around human territory. His ship was equipped with the most advanced sensors the Andorian collective could build, but what he was detecting made no sense according to any known physics. Command, this is Survey Ship Terminus, he reported. The barrier around human space is changing. Explain, came the reply from Andorian Command. It is not just expanding, sir. It is becoming more complex. We are detecting multiple layers of space-time distortion, some of which appear to be folded back on themselves. It is like the humans are building their own universe inside our universe. As Kelthas watched, the shimmer that marked the edge of human space began to pulse with new colors. Sensors that had been designed to detect matter and energy started picking up signatures of things that should not exist. Negative mass, temporal loops, spaces that were bigger on the inside than the outside. Command, we are also detecting massive energy signatures from deep inside human territory. Whatever they are building in there, it is drawing power from multiple star systems simultaneously. Are they building a weapon? Command asked. Kelthus studied his readings carefully. Sir, I do not think they are building anything we would recognize as a weapon. The energy patterns suggest they are building something on a scale we cannot comprehend. Similar reports were coming in from every border of human space. The humans were not just hiding behind advanced technology, they were transforming the very nature of reality within their territory. But the most disturbing discovery came from Dr. Venthari, a quantum physicist who had worked closely with human researchers for decades. She had been analyzing the communication patterns of the barrier around human space, trying to understand how it worked. What she found changed everything. The barrier is not a defensive measure, she announced to her research team. It is a chrysalis. Her colleagues stared at her in confusion. What do you mean? Asked her assistant. I mean, the humans are not hiding from us, Dr. Venthari explained. They are transforming into something else. The barrier is protecting us from them, not protecting them from us. She displayed her findings on the laboratory's main screen. The data showed that the space inside the human barrier was undergoing constant, accelerating changes. Matter and energy were being reorganized according to principles that violated every known law of physics. Based on these readings, I believe the humans are transitioning to a higher dimensional state of existence, Dr. Venthari continued. They are becoming something that our three-dimensional minds cannot fully comprehend. The fear that gripped her research team was shared across the galaxy as the news spread. The humans had not just left the Galactic Council, they were leaving the physical universe entirely. And they had been planning it for centuries. Back on Centauri Prime, Dr. Zithrak was putting the final pieces of the puzzle together. She had found references to something called Project Ascension in the deepest archives of human research facilities. The project had been started over 400 years ago, shortly after humans first encountered galactic civilization. The project's goals were simple and terrifying. Study the limitations of existing galactic species. Reality itself was breaking down around human space. Commander Kelthus watched his instruments with growing terror, as impossible readings flooded his sensors. Space and time were behaving like water around the human barrier, flowing in directions that had no names in any language he knew. Command, this is Survey Ship Terminus, he reported, his voice barely steady. The temporal distortions around human space are getting worse. We are detecting chronometer readings that show the same moment happening multiple times simultaneously. The response from Andorian Command was filled with static. Communication itself was becoming unreliable near the human barrier, as if the laws that governed information transfer were being rewritten. Repeat your last transmission, Terminus. We are showing impossible readings from your position. Kelthus looked at his chronometer and felt his sanity strain. According to his instruments, it was simultaneously morning and evening, yesterday and tomorrow. His ship existed in multiple time streams at once, experiencing different versions of the same moment. Command, we need to withdraw immediately. The humans are not just manipulating space-time anymore. They are replacing it with something else entirely. As he gave the order to retreat, Kelthus caught a glimpse of something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Deep within the shifting reality of human space, he saw structures that existed in dimensions his eyes could not properly process. Buildings that were bigger on the inside than the outside. Cities that occupied the same space as multiple star systems. Beings that looked human but cast shadows in directions where no light was shining. The humans were not just transforming their technology, they were transforming themselves. But even as alien observers struggled to understand what was happening in human space, the transformation reached its completion. After 5 centuries of patient preparation, humanity was ready to reveal what they had become. The announcement came without warning. Every communication device in the galaxy suddenly activated at the same moment. Every screen, every holographic projector, every translation matrix, all of it hijacked simultaneously by a signal that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere at once. Elena Vasquez appeared on every display, but she was no longer entirely human. Her image flickered between different versions of herself, young and old, solid and translucent, existing in what appeared to be multiple dimensions simultaneously. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies alien ears had never heard before. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, and her words somehow translated perfectly into every language simultaneously, including languages that had been dead for thousands of years. We greet you one final time before our departure. In the Galactic Council chambers on Centauri Prime, the remaining representatives stared in horrified fascination at the image before them. Elena Vasquez looked like a goddess wearing the memory of human form. You called us primitives, she continued, her smile carrying the weight of cosmic amusement. In many ways you were correct. When we first encountered your civilization, we were indeed primitive compared to what we have become, but we learned quickly. Her image gestured, and suddenly the display expanded to show impossible vistas, cities that existed in folded space-time, where buildings grew like living things and reached into dimensions that alien minds could not perceive. Humans who moved through reality like swimmers through water, their consciousness extended across multiple layers of existence. We spent 5 centuries studying your civilizations, not because we needed your knowledge, but because we wanted to understand the limitations that kept you trapped in this single layer of reality. The implications hit the watching aliens like a physical blow. Humanity had been studying them like specimens in a laboratory, learning their weaknesses and limitations while pretending to be students. Your species have existed for millions of years, yet you never grew beyond your basic nature, Elena continued. You fought the same wars, repeated the same mistakes, and remained locked in patterns of thought that prevented true advancement. We wanted to understand why. Images flashed around her showing the history of galactic civilization from humanity's perspective. Wars that repeated every few thousand years with different participants but identical causes. Technologies that reached a certain level and then stagnated for millennia. Diplomatic solutions that lasted just long enough for the same problems to resurface in new forms. We discovered that you had become comfortable with your limitations. You specialized in narrow fields and relied on others to handle everything else. You lost the ability to think beyond your current understanding. You became afraid of true change. In the Kalari Federation, Admiral Kethmore watched the broadcast from his stranded flagship, his blue skin pale with realization. Everything Elena was saying was true. His people had been the galaxy's premier military force for thousands of years, but they had never questioned why they needed to fight the same enemies over and over again. But we also learned that this stagnation was not inevitable, Elena continued. It was a choice to remain safe within known boundaries rather than risk growth into unknown possibilities. Her image changed again, showing humans as they had been when they first joined the galactic community, young, eager, asking endless questions that had annoyed their alien teachers. But now those same aliens could see the truth behind those questions. Every question we asked was designed to map the edges of your thinking. Every technology we shared was a test to see if you could grow beyond your preconceptions. Every war we helped you resolve was an experiment in whether you could learn to solve your own problems. The humans had been conducting the largest psychological experiment in galactic history, using entire civilizations as test subjects. We wanted to give you the opportunity to evolve alongside us, Elena said, and for the first time her voice carried what might have been sadness. But you interpreted our gifts as validation of your existing beliefs. You took our improvements to your technology and declared yourselves advanced. You used our diplomatic solutions to avoid learning how to solve your own conflicts. On Nexus Station, the few remaining alien administrators watched the broadcast in stunned silence. They were finally understanding why humans had been so patient with alien arrogance for so many centuries. The humans had been waiting to see if their students would eventually become teachers themselves. You failed the test, Elena said simply, not through any fault of character, but because you were no longer capable of the kind of growth that true advancement requires. You had become too comfortable with being small, the galaxy's greatest. Civilizations had been found wanting by the species they had dismissed as primitive, but our study of your limitations taught us everything we needed to know about transcending our own, Elena continued. By understanding why you remained trapped, we learned how to become free. Her image expanded again, showing the reality that humans now inhabited. They existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, their consciousness spread across layers of existence that made concepts like space and time meaningless. They had become beings of pure thought and will, capable of reshaping reality through the power of focused intention. We are leaving this layer of existence, Elena announced. But before we go, we want to leave you with one final gift. Across the galaxy, human technology suddenly reactivated, but it had been transformed. Weapons designed for war became medical devices that could heal any injury or disease. Warships became mobile hospitals that could sustain entire populations. Communication arrays began broadcasting not messages, but pure knowledge. The complete accumulated wisdom of human civilization, freely available to anyone willing to learn. This is our legacy to you, Elena explained. The tools and knowledge needed to transcend your current limitations if you choose to use them. But understand, we will not guide you anymore. We will not solve your problems or mediate your conflicts. This gift comes with the responsibility to grow beyond your need for teachers. In the Etherian Federation, Chancellor Morthene watched in amazement as the falling cities suddenly began to rise again. Human technology was repairing itself, but it was also teaching her people how to maintain it properly. For the first time in millennia, the Etherians would have to learn instead of simply depending on others. Some of you will use these gifts to build better weapons and fight more efficiently, Elena said. Others will use them to explore and grow and become more than you were. The choice is yours, as it always has been. Her image began to fade, becoming translucent as humanity prepared to step beyond the reach of three-dimensional existence. If you ever grow beyond your current limitations, she said in farewell, if you ever learn to see existence as more than a zero-sum game between competing interests, call out to the spaces between reality. We will be listening. Until then, this galaxy is yours to learn from. Try to do better than we did. Try to become teachers instead of remaining students forever. The transmission ended, leaving every alien species in the galaxy staring at empty screens. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The magnitude of what they had just learned was too vast to process immediately. Then, slowly, reality began to reassert itself. The temporal distortions around human space faded away.